Hard-working hands, non-stop production lines. The economy should be booming, according to German lore. A growing economy means growing prosperity, the foundation on which Germany was built.
I believe economic growth is essential to safeguard our prosperity.
But now Germany isn't doing well. Billions of euros in debt. The economy, lackluster. 2023, negative growth of 0.3%. But is that a bad thing? Or could it be a blessing? At least for the climate. What would a world without economic growth look like? These people are angry. Fall 2023, climate demonstrations in all of Germany's major cities. Environment protests have become one of the great social movements of our time. The average global temperature continued to rise in 2023. Apparently, it was the warmest year since records began.
Ich sag Klima, ihr sagt Schutz! Klima! Schutz! Klima! Schutz!
The battle for climate protection has long been waged on the streets. We have not only a climate problem, but also a social one. For some, the planet comes first. Others are afraid of high energy costs, social decline, or the loss of benefits. Farmers in Germany demonstrated against the abolition of subsidized diesel for agriculture. In Hamburg, on the other hand, people rallied in support of a new perspective.
I'm sick and tired of hearing about all the things we need more of, when actually we need less of everything. We don't need more energy, we just need to be using less of it.
Above all, we should stop portraying our understanding of prosperity as the sacred cow.
Here, they're giving it a try. Hamburg Hohe Luft. In the heart of the city's district, the restaurant Klinker. Dishes here cost between 15 and 21 euros, with several courses needed to satiate the appetite. Aaron Hasenpusch and Marianus von Hörsten know the restaurant rat race well. Very well, in fact. Both have worked in Michelin-starred restaurants for years. 18-hour days, pressure, stress. Then they opened their own restaurant and decided, we're going to do things differently.
In the kitchens where we've worked, you're just a number, and staff are a dime a dozen. And then working 18-hour days in a neon-lit basement kitchen, you prep mangoes from Thailand, birds from France, and fish from Brittany, and who knows what else, for 2 stars.
Not so here at the Klinker. In summer, regional vegetables are preserved for the winter menu. Sustainable, good for the climate, and for people. Both chefs agree, increasing sales and profit isn't the most important thing.
The career path I saw ahead of me would only have been possible with a pushy mentality, and that's just not me. And I realize that all the people in the industry who I look up to are all pretty exhausted.
Little danger of that here. Fair wages for staff, no unpaid overtime, only organic ingredients. Kind to the planet and people.
For sure, we could get double the work out of them. But if I grind them down here every day, at some point they'll burn out. Burnout's nothing new, but we just keep going.
The most radical decision, the restaurants closed on the weekend. when business typically peaks.
When I told my dad that we're closed on Saturday and Sunday, he looked at me and said, "Son, you can't do that, it won't work."
But it does, in the restaurant's particular niche at least. An intentional boundary that the chefs can and want to afford.
What are we passing up? We're passing up the chance of owning our own home in our early 30s and having a Porsche parked outside the door. That's it.
Concerns that are a world away from the life of this man. Jürgen Helmut's alarm clock goes off at 1 a.m. every morning for more than 50 years.
I work 7 days a week. There's no other way. We're at capacity. I enjoy my job, but it's tiring. 7 days a week without any time off.
If there were 8 days in the week, he'd still be at work. His bakery in a small Hessian town has a staff of 26. Here, no one's thinking about home ownership or luxury cars. Rather, survival in a world with discounted plastic-wrapped supermarket bread.
There has to be growth, however small. If we stagnated, staff and energy costs are up. The price of ingredients is rising yet again. We've got to absorb these costs somehow.
If he closed for several days, like the Klinker restaurant, Jürgen Helmut would be quickly wiped off the market.
No, 4-day weeks don't work. We're a service provider. If we did a 4-day week, many of our customers would just take their business elsewhere.
At the supermarket next door, pretzels cost just 30 cents. But this business thrives on its customer loyalty and appreciation. Lunchtime. Jürgen Helmut has already worked a 13-hour day. Doing the job he loves comes at a price.
It can sometimes be a balancing act, yes. And you've got to give up on family time because the business needs attention, which means I can't go to the soccer games. It's a shame. I love watching my son play soccer. Very few of our customers are aware of what's involved because it's difficult to convey. Having to get up every night without fail.
Jürgen Helmut is often pushed to his limits. The planet has also reached its limits, just like our economic system did a while back already. A burning issue for this woman.
My name's Ulrike Herrmann, and I've written a book titled The End of Capitalism, Why Growth and Climate Protection Are Incompatible, and How We'll Live in the Future.
A gathering of business consultants. Growing the economy is their professional duty. She's here as a guest speaker.
You can't grow infinitely in a finite world. It's just not possible. Germany is currently behaving as though it could consume 3 planets. But as we're all aware, there's only one Earth.
Capitalism is now the problem, says Herrmann. And extreme times require radical solutions. To get a handle on the climate crisis, our economic output must shrink dramatically.
The question is, what needs to shrink here and what doesn't? The answer is clear. Particularly energy-intensive sectors that emit the most CO2 must be scaled down. Planes, cars, the chemical and steel industries, but also the construction of new homes are all problematic and should be phased out.
Der Rest der Welt würde sich Deutschland anschauen und sagen, jetzt sind sie völlig verrückt geworden.
The rest of the world would look at Germany and say, "You've completely lost your mind." The emissions we generate overall are 2% of total global emissions. So we can shut down the entire German economy overnight and deal with the social problems that will entail. The 4-day week won't help much there. And then, on the other hand, realize there hasn't been any progress on climate protection.
Gar nicht nach vorne gegangen.
My name's Lars Feld. I am professor for economic policy at the University of Freiburg, director of the Walter Eucken Institute, and active in various advisory roles in economic policymaking. Even if we discuss this at length for Germany, essentially the conditions must be imposed worldwide, and I don't really see how that can happen.
Back in the early 1970s, scientists led by Dennis Meadows warned that something had to change on a global scale. Their report, The Limits to Growth, commissioned by the Club of Rome, outlined precise calculations of the impact of exponential growth on the planet. Continuing a business-as-usual approach will lead to catastrophe, it said. 50 years later, the question is still the same. Should our economy be allowed to continue growing? It won't work, say representatives of what's known as the degrowth or post-growth movement. The economy must shrink. Polluting energy sources should go. We should do without unnecessary luxury goods. Energy-intensive sectors, such as aviation, the automobile industry, or new construction, should be phased out, allowing for the expansion of sectors securing a sustainable future: renewables, public transport, energy-efficient renovation, guaranteeing jobs in the process. That should be the path we follow, away from the religion of growth. But how do we get there? How do we voluntarily live with less? We wanted to find out. One family, one experiment. Luise, Kolja, Lasse, and Linus try it for 2 weeks. The rules: buy regional products to limit imports. Instead of energy-guzzling online streaming, offline entertainment only.
The offline entertainment, I think we should do that.
I disagree.
More bike instead of car.
We're up for that, aren't we, Lasse?
Yes.
Even when it's raining?
Yes.
Less living space.
What could we do without, Lasse?
My desk. I never use it.
We certainly don't need to use the veranda.
From 1991 to 2021 alone, living space per capita in Germany increased by 37%. For the next 2 weeks, the family won't use part of their house. They plan a holiday without flying. Leave the car at home and cycle instead, for example, to the nearest supermarket. So off they go. Seasonal, regional products only. No imports. Let's see what variety is on offer.
That comes from France, they're from Belgium, they're from Holland, that's from Austria.
Hubba Bubba?
No, we can't get Hubba Bubba either. Look, that's regional. And what does it say on the packaging? Chocolate-covered spelt cookies.
Ew, spelt cookies.
We always had that at my grandma's.
Since 1921.
Okay, we can take these. They're from Berlin, and we had them back in the day. Berlin sugar mice. Shall we have them?
Yes.
We could make a salad and a pumpkin soup and grilled fennel. Yes, that's good.
But I can't eat tomatoes with that.
We didn't get any tomatoes or cucumber from Germany.
It wasn't that easy to find things. And in midwinter, what kind of vegetables can you buy apart from cabbage and pumpkin? The pumpkin season's coming to an end, and in any case, you don't want to eat that all the time. So there's the question of what you switch to.
Today, it's pumpkin soup for dinner. Everything is checked. But not everyone's happy.
So we can't just eat soup normally without some sort of issue? The spoon isn't local.
Doing without is difficult, but is the radical approach the only way forward? Do we really have to turn our economic model upside down in order to save the climate?
My name's Morten Freidel, I'm political editor at the Frankfurter Allgemeine Sonntagszeitung, and I write about energy policy. From the German debate, you could be forgiven for thinking that climate protection and the economy are polar opposites. That's unfortunate, because in actual fact, a flourishing economy is ideal for effective climate protection. It costs money after all. A growing economy is essential for climate protection. If we didn't have a prospering economy, what would happen to tax revenues? Then I reckon climate protection would be the first thing to fall by the wayside.
Environmental protection costs money too. In Freidel's view, restricting economic growth is the wrong approach.
Germany won't be a role model for the world if everyone here is poor, going around on bicycles and patched up clothes. We may well be climate neutral, but no one's going to follow our example, because in the rest of the world, maybe people want to drive a Mercedes. Perhaps that's what they find so appealing about the German model. Not that we're climate neutral, but that we're climate neutral and still prosperous.
Making money and running clean businesses. Green growth. That's possible, says Wilhelm Müller. He used to attend these rallies regularly when he was active in Fridays for Future. He made posters, registered demonstrations, and took to the streets. But now he's distanced himself from the movement.
Earlier, a speaker was saying she can't hear the words wealth and growth anymore. I thought it was very odd, because that doesn't fit with my assessment of the issue at all. In my view, prosperity creates so much. Yes, many countries would give anything for prosperity like this. So to be honest, I find it very strange.
Today, Wilhelm has taken his fight off the streets and onto the stock exchange. He now works as a fund manager, investing in companies that are making a conscious effort to reduce their carbon emissions.
We're investing in companies that may not be green yet, but that are in the process of turning green, so to speak. Green is, of course, an abstract concept. They're realizing their Paris-compliant climate protection strategy. We're investing in these companies because it gives us influence on that process.
His philosophy? Effect change where the impact will be greatest.
A huge number of goods are exported here from the Federal Republic of Germany, and there's a lot of leverage there. It stands to reason that we can save much more CO2 here than on an individual level in the home.
He definitely doesn't envisage the end of capitalism. On the contrary.
This is about the basis for human existence, and consequently, the economy must adapt to the altered conditions. It must change. But I firmly believe it will continue to grow.
Climate protection and economic growth can be bedfellows because it'll be essential for climate protection that carbon pricing incentivizes technical progress and innovation. And technical progress is essential for economic growth.
A flourishing economy and a green transition. For Müller and Feld, the two things complement one another. That's the idea behind green growth. For almost 200 years, it's been true. When a country's economy grows, so does environmental pollution. But with green growth, this no longer applies. In fact, emissions should fall, continued growth, but in the green zone, by way of new technologies, clean energy, and market-based ideas. A booming economy with decreasing CO2 emissions. A goal not just within industry, but also across the whole of the EU. With the Green Deal, the European Union aims to be the world's first climate-neutral continent by 2050. The Otto Fuchs Group. Special metal parts for the automotive and aviation industries are manufactured here. For example, car wheel rims. An energy-intensive industry that faces major challenges. This site alone consumes as much energy as a town of 40,000 inhabitants. Nevertheless,
as a company, we're committed to the 1.5-degree target. We've set our goals accordingly and drawn up a 20-year roadmap. And that means it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, where you need to be accompanied along the route and provided with the conditions to make it possible.
Germany's Climate and Transformation Fund was established to do just that. But then came the bombshell from Karlsruhe in November 2023. The Federal Constitutional Court declared it unconstitutional to reallocate unused coronavirus funding to the Climate Fund, jeopardizing its operations, with a knock-on effect at Otto Fuchs.
We assumed that where funding had been approved, it would stay that way. So it came as a huge shock. The projects are no longer financially viable, and the significant improvements we'd hoped for, including carbon neutrality, are now unfortunately much more difficult to achieve.
New climate-friendly machines suddenly had to be financed without the expected subsidies. Another purchase was cancelled altogether. New funding opportunities unveiled by Economic Minister Robert Habeck in March 2024 are at best a drop in the ocean for the metal processing industry. International competition is tough.
It's not the job of politics to make our lives easy, but it's also not the job of politics to make our lives difficult. If you're getting investment commitments in advance, and these aren't honored, then that's very frustrating, of course. We're all fully aware of the budget's current state, and now we're having to see what we can do to get ourselves out of this dilemma, where we're still expected to tackle this transformation with significantly less funding, and that'll be a major challenge for the entire industry.
China undercuts prices abroad, and America heavily subsidizes its own economy. In his view, without much more generous subsidies in Germany, a green economic miracle seems unlikely.
You get the sense that there is no concept, and also a sense that industry isn't wanted at all, that it'll simply go away, achieving the emissions reductions target that way.
Others were luckier and secured their subsidies before the Constitutional Court turned off the tap. Like ThyssenKrupp. German steel, long regarded as the backbone of the economy, the basis for its upturn, the epitome of quality. The country had a clear path to becoming the world's leading exporter and to unimagined prosperity. But this success has come at a price. The Ruhr region is a case in point. After all, 2.5% of all harmful greenhouse gases in Germany are emitted from ThyssenKrupp chimneys alone. Globally, the steel industry is responsible for 8% of all emissions.
We are not waiting for anyone else to begin, we're starting ourselves. We in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia are supporting this project at ThyssenKrupp with one of the largest funding decisions to date. The largest funding decision in the history of the Federal Republic of Germany.
Hope to the tune of 2 billion euros. But not everyone's able to imagine this green miracle.
If you break it down, I'd argue that green growth is macroeconomic greenwashing.
In other words, for him, growth remains problematic.
My name is Matthias Schmelzer. I'm an economic historian and transformation researcher. I've long been focused on growth and alternatives to growth.
The ecological transformation won't succeed with further growth, says Schmelzer. He believes green growth isn't a solution to the climate crisis.
Since the mid-70s at least, it's been claimed that economic growth can be decoupled from environmental impact. But that hasn't happened yet. and there's little evidence to suggest it'll take place to a sufficient extent in the time that remains.
Here, they're pondering different ways to do business. The University of Flensburg. The course, Transformation Research.
What we're basically seeing is the promises that were made regarding efficiency gains or a greening process through technology gains don't go far enough.
Schmelzer says that like almost all industrialized countries, Germany would need another 220 years at the current rate to attain climate neutrality.
We all know this is far too late, and that by then, economies like Germany's will have exceeded their CO2 budget many times over. In principle, we can imagine that trying to decarbonize a growing economy is like trying to go down an escalator that's constantly going up.
Studies show that industrialized countries should actually be cleaning up their act 10 times faster than they have been. Critics believe this isn't possible with even more growth, because generating sufficient green energy isn't plausible. Contraction is the only solution, they say.
It's been calculated how many wind turbines would be needed by ThyssenKrupp alone. And that's just one steel plant. So you won't be able to do that across the board for the entire economy. As far as I'm concerned, it's absolutely clear that it will come down to doing without. Either that will be forced by the climate crisis, or we'll be smart enough to do it in advance.
It has to be separated from the political debate. Individuals keen to make personal cutbacks should definitely go ahead. Such a choice can only be applauded. Citizens wield great power here. If most people suddenly decide to eat less meat, it'll have an incredible impact on our carbon footprint. Or if people want to plan vacations without flying. I just warn against turning it into a political program, because that would stir up resistance and doom it to failure once again.
In Dresden, our experiment continues. Living with less. Is it possible? And would it be that bad? A vacation without air travel. That's today's task for Kolja and Luise. They want to go to Portugal.
We need to get to Villanova.
2,925 kilometers.
29 hours by car.
With public transport.
1, 2, 3, 6 changes.
I'd never guessed. It's not at all easy to find out how to get there.
So from Dresden to Paris and from Paris to Bordeaux.
And now we've got to get from Bordeaux to Madrid. That should work, shouldn't it?
So according to this, both journeys there and back would take at least 2-3 days. Unless you can plan a 3-week holiday. It's not worth it, I guess.
Yeah.
3 days there and 3 days back. If you've got loads of time and you can be relaxed about it, then I think it's a great way to travel. But because I can only take 2 weeks holiday at a time, this sort of trip isn't an option for me. It's not possible.
Living like this isn't really very satisfying, is it?
What you have to realize is that often individuals are trapped in work structures. They don't have the option to say, hey boss, I'm only doing a 30-hour week now and I'll take a pay cut, or I still want my full salary. That'd be even better, of course. I'm Hilke Brockmann. I'm a sociology professor. My work is focused on happiness. We're also part of larger structures and they constrain us. In midlife in particular, you have a lot of obligations. So your hands are often tied.
But at what point are we content? Does well-being always require more and more of everything?
Ist
less growth really the question, or is different growth perhaps the better idea? It's a question that's also been addressed in happiness research. We need an alternative gauge, and actually, isn't human contentment or happiness a very good gauge? Because it's something that people can judge for themselves.
Marianus and Aaron, the owners of restaurant Klinker, have found their happiness. For them, prosperity has a lot to do with feeling well.
Hey, good to see you.
Yes, great that you've dropped by.
But little to do with growth. In their past roles, there was rarely time to carefully select products directly from the farmer.
How to keep growing? Is it a question of size, more stores, more restaurants, more acceptance? Or internally? How can we improve what we do? Our communication, social and moral responsibility.
Where we are in the sector, it'd be difficult to run another 10 businesses in the same way.
My definition of growth is in any case quite different than the socially accepted norm. So if I can ask myself, what am I actually doing here? Why am I doing this at all? What gets me out of bed in the morning and into bed at night? That's the point. And if I'm making progress there, then I'd say that for me, that's more meaningful than a growth that's purely monetary.
We also have to break the thought patterns we've been taught. We haven't yet learned to say that we define prosperity differently.
They took a leap of faith, contrary to broad economic theory, which focuses on one clear goal: growth. After all, the economy has a benchmark: the gross domestic product, a figure that packs a punch. It measures the sum of all goods and services produced in an economy. But the GDP doesn't register the usefulness or sustainability of a service. No matter whether I buy an SUV or sell hand-knitted sweaters, the main thing is money is moved. On a 100,000 square kilometer island in the cold North Atlantic, they've devised a new economic formula for themselves: well-being and quality of life, instead of a blind faith in growth. It was their response to crisis. 2008, the international financial crash rocked the nation. Iceland's financial sector was in ruins. The country's 3 major banks went bust within a week. The nation's currency plummeted. Thousands of Icelanders were drowning in debt and lost their homes. Thousands lost their jobs. The result? Protests outside Parliament and a call for new elections. At the time, Thor Sigfusson was head of a large insurance company and a top earner. But he too was caught up in the financial crash.
I think in many ways it was, of course, a crisis for me as well. So I wouldn't like to relive that period again. But at least what I found out is that I needed to continue. And I needed to look back to some of the ideas that I had and figure out what it could be where I could really have a stand. So it was a time of sort of like of rethinking my existence in many ways.
Sigfusson founded Ocean Cluster in 2011, bringing together tech companies and the fisheries industry. The idea? To use as much of the fish as possible. Good for value creation and the environment. In the wake of the crisis, Iceland has reorganized itself and redefined its perception of economic success. For example, more attention is now being paid to health and environmental factors. Ólöf Tryggvadóttir used to manage a large company. Now she runs a small store. Thank goodness, she says.
I can keep the balance just any way I like because it's much smaller business. I control it much easier. It's much less pressure, much less stress.
She's lost nothing through her decision, but gained a great deal. For example, time and the willingness to use it.
I loved being in the nature. You get more connected to the earth, to the ground, being close to the nature and the horses.
As they say in Iceland, quality of life is also part of prosperity, not just money. Just like clean air and social cohesion.
We are also rather closely connected with our families and with friends. It's a small nation, people know people. And I think that's one part of it, is the closeness of people, between people.
In 2019, the well-being economy was introduced as a basic political program in Iceland. The nation hasn't turned its back on economic growth altogether. But now, whether something has a price tag isn't all that matters.
The well-being economy focuses on other issues than just economic growth, which is what most nations are focusing on and the UN collects data for. But with a growing economy, that doesn't mean that neither nature or people have any sort of well-being. My name is Kristín Vala Ragnarsdóttir. I'm a professor in the Department of Earth Sciences at the University of Iceland.
She played a key role in Iceland's economic policy shift.
It's important to think about the economy in a different way, an economy which is for people and planet, and not just for bookkeeping, to show that you're actually using more and more resources, selling more and more stuff, and people collecting what they actually don't really need.
39 indicators have since served as a political basis guiding decisions on the use of public funds.
So all investments need to be shifted to be good for people and planet, and that is very important. So basically the well-being economy thinking is about repurposing the economy.
Doing business, but differently. Growth alone doesn't make us happy. That's the idea. Perhaps a model for Germany too? Germany has one of the most important economies in the world. This is both an opportunity and a challenge in the battle against climate collapse. As a society, we must do something. Each and every one of us can do something. In Dresden, life has certainly changed, at least for the duration of our experiment.
Taking Lasse to school by bike, I think that's...
Yes.
Exactly, we can keep doing that.
I already know the landscape because we always take the same route by car. Then it's just a bit boring to sit in the car all the time and look at boring scenery.
I've scaled back on my use of media, and above all online media. And it makes you realize that these days, you need to be online. You can't manage everyday life without being online, whether it's for school or just for fun. So in the long run, it doesn't work.
For 2 weeks, the Linowitzkis have tried going without and voluntarily set themselves limitations.
I think it's okay. I'd be happy to shop more at the organic store, and in any case, I'm the kind of person who likes to have more time for things. But in my view, the issue here is you just can't make the time.
In general, I think it's really nice. But time demands such a fast-paced life. From there to there to there. That's only possible by car. And then the food has to be cooked quickly. It has to happen fast. To be honest, I don't know how that would work in our everyday life.
The results of the experiment? It's doable. Partly.
It's just a bit tricky with the offline entertainment.
Yeah, but I managed it. 2 days. Something at least.
More or less. The definitive question for the future. Prosperity without growth, or only with growth?
Essentially, it's about differentiating between useful growth and less useful growth and having a social debate about it.
If we don't manage to build a climate-neutral system in which we can grow economically, then the planet is doomed.
Longer-term growth makes it easier to mitigate the distribution conflicts that can arise in a society. If the cake grows, it's easier to share than if it remains the same size.
In a worst-case scenario, where we're giving up about 50% of our economic output, we'd still be as rich as the West Germans were in 1978. And as anyone around at the time will tell you, we were just as happy then as we are now, and it was a good life.
But I'm still keeping the hope that we will turn around and put us on a better path.